Anyway, Star Wars Squadrons came out.
Yes.
On Friday. I've played the first handful of missions of that campaign. Jeff, I know you've played some of it.
Yeah, I'm probably not as far into the campaign as you are, but I played some multiplayer and also fucked around with the VR stuff a lot.
You defied their recommendation.
Yeah, fuck them.
Finish the story campaign before going online.
That's insane.
But what about the Empire?
That's insane. Know? It's dogfighting. Like, come on. Don't be dumb.
I received an optional mission objective to destroy the jamming ships before the capital ship.
Yeah.
There's going on there.
There's certainly things you will learn by playing the story. There's
a little. I mean, maybe not much more, but there is a little bit more than just dogfighting TIE fighters. Although that has been the majority of the campaign so far.
Oh, I mean, the multiplayer is like there's two modes, and one is dogfighting, and one is dogfighting plus capital ships and AI. Oh. So it's that's
it's a $40
selling that on mode.
We should probably say up front it's a $40 game.
It's a little bare bones,
a little bit,
and I think it's well done for the price, and it seems pretty good. I don't know, I don't have a ton of complaints. I don't necessarily think they like knocked it out of the park. What an amazing thing! Oh my god! But it's fine. It's cool. I don't know.
I'm enjoying it for what it is, but it definitely took me some time to ramp up to appreciating what it is, because it is not a true successor to those games. It looks like those games, and it has some of the features of those games.
And it's like splitting the difference in some ways between the original kind of X-Wing and TIE Fighter stuff and something way more arcadey.
Absolutely.
Not full Rogue Squadron.
Yes. It's not. It is more technical than a Rogue Squadron, but it's really only got like a toe in the full like simulation zone.
Absolutely. And I feel like there are people out there doing this, and more power to them. But it's the sort of game that the people that are like, I'm gonna get a HOTAS and we're gonna do this, like that just doesn't seem like this game to me. Yeah. Like this game seems very much like you totally can
for sure.
But it very much seems like, hey, this is a gamepad game.
Yeah.
And it's a very simple in that way, in ways that you don't necessarily think of when people start to bust out their HOTAS. It's usually for some kind of simulation, and I just don't think this is as deep as that. I mean, go do your thing with your HOTAS, I guess, but it just doesn't seem like it warrants that.
I mean, the big, so I've been playing it only on PS4 so far, and yes, it is totally fine and playable on a controller.
Yeah, and I've been playing it on a controller as well. It's I
want to ask you, because you have played actual real ass TIE Fighter in the last month or whatever. I hope I'm not getting this wrong, because I have not played TIE Fighter since the 90s, but the whole thing about you could balance power between like your shields, your engines, your guns, all that shit. Mm-hmm. In games like TIE Fighter, you were like literally hitting like up and down, like plus and minus, and like raising that slowly up and down, like in very fine increments, right? And you could like balance shields back and forth, be like, hey, divert more power to the rear shield because I'm flying away from things right now.
Right, or hit the button to kind of distribute the power evenly. Or
This is much more simplified than that. It is literally 3 D-pad buttons. It is, if I got this right, I think it's left for engines, up for guns, right for shields. And all that's doing is when you hit one of those, and it maxes that category.
Yeah. So I guess if you are, and I haven't played with a mouse and keyboard, so I haven't like mapped controls and stuff like that. Vinny mentioned this yesterday when we were talking, that if you are playing, with something more than a gamepad, supposedly you can kind of do that a little differently if you want to have like different power configurations than just maxing one of the 3.
Is that buried in the options somewhere?
I don't know. That is what he implied, and I need to go look and see. I'm assuming you can just map buttons on your keyboard or whatever to have more granular control over that stuff if you want it. It just doesn't necessarily seem like the campaign per se will warrant that. Obviously, I mean, if they're building it with gamepad support and the reductions there that you have.
Okay. Some people in the chat are saying there is an advanced mode you can go in and turn on. I looked around briefly in the options and I didn't see that. It's interesting, though, when you start the game, they do give you the option to have the HUD on or not.
Right.
They do say, like, hey, default is full-on video game HUD, like flying arrows and icons all over the place. Or you can do the just cockpit instruments mode, which is actually still not just cockpit instruments, because there are still some floating indicators in that mode.
Yeah, but like the default HUD is like full on Call of Duty, like it writes the word follow above a target's head, or chase, or or whatever, and it's very much that.
But
I don't think the story is very good from what I've seen.
Yeah, I'm only
so far.
A handful of missions in. It's pretty boilerplate so far. It's not terrible, but
I mean, opening with like a defection of someone defecting from the Empire, like in the literal open, when the last, like was that Battlefront 2 was all about that stuff, like the bad guy that can't stay bad forever as the trope of like, how do we make people feel good about playing as the bad guys? Like, solving that problem the same way over and over again. It's just like, come on.
I started to say that was also TIE Fighter, but it was not, because when people betrayed the Empire in TIE Fighter, it was because they were more evil than the Empire.
Yeah.
They wanted to launch a coup against the Emperor and take over, not because they were having a crisis of conscience.
Yeah. Which people don't want to play as the fucking literal. People don't want to play as space Nazis.
Yes, obviously times have changed a bit.
But like that narrative trope of like finding a way out of that particular quandary, they've just done it too much.
Yeah.
You gotta just say, oh well, we're coming up with something else, or hey, you can't play as TIE fighters in this game. I don't know what the actual solution is there, because obviously people want to play as, people want to fly those ships.
I have a question about this game.
Go ahead.
Do you think this game is in a weird middle point where it's not going to super appeal to people who want TIE Fighter, the like very simmy kind of classic experience, and people who want Rogue Squadron, the very kind of arcadey, you can do anything, just fly around and shoot a guy experience?
Yes, I think that is exactly the case, and I think if you are one of those two people, you can still enjoy this game, but in either case, it's not going to be all the way on the end of the spectrum that you want.
It feels like I feel like, there's some tactics around the movement, right? So you can cut power and change direction. Like there's stuff around that is a little more simmy in spots than
like
you might
they straight up tell you like, hey, cut your engines when you're doing a hard turn, and you'll like turn more sharply and stuff like that, which comes in handy for like when you're trying to evade locked on missiles and do a quick turn on a dogfight and stuff like that.
Yeah, like pretty basic physics-y type stuff that like a more arcadey game maybe would ignore in favor of just like, you just have an amazing turning radius or whatever.
Yeah, there is some technique there for sure.
Yeah, but it's not. They don't. Yeah, I guess the thing is they don't commit all the way, one way or the other. It feels like an arcadey game with some shield management options. And, you occasionally have to resupply when you run out of missiles or something like that. They give you some things around that.
Yeah, it feels a lot more video gamey to me than those games did. Like you've got straight up power-ups in this. Like you've got a droid heal basically on a cooldown. You can just pop every so often to get health back, and like you can get resupplied from other ships, which was totally not a thing back in the day that I remember.
I feel like there was a resupply, like call for resupply.
There may be some of that stuff, but it wasn't like just a magic button press where you press the button and it just happened.
Yeah.
Those games were a lot more strict about that stuff.
Yeah. So, I think that like if you're looking for that type of experience or something, this isn't that, but I don't mean that to mean that this is bad per se. It's just, it is kind of caught in that middle ground, and maybe it won't fully appeal to anyone who is looking for anything at those extremes. But on its own, like to me, this seems like a VR game. To me, this seems like a game they developed as a VR game and then said, well, we can't have it be VR only. Come on. We want it to sell to more than the number of people that own headsets.
That is the thing I was working up to saying about this, is that yes, it's not a VR only game, but it might as well be, I think. Like, I don't know. I haven't played it on the TV. Maybe it's totally fine on a TV. I know someone who is playing through it on a TV right now who is kind of bored of it.
Yeah, whereas, I think that I found it to be a little more playable and a bit easier on a monitor. I'm playing on PC than in VR, but
like being in the cockpit, like literally just looking around inside of a damn X-Wing or TIE fighter is like 90% of the appeal of this game. Honestly.
Yeah, though at the same time, like I think you have to also want that specifically to be a Star Wars cockpit. If you were looking for a space dogfighting game that is built for VR and built to take advantage of it, I still think Eve Valkyrie is a better game. Yeah,
but I'm like, I know what the ships, what the fighters are, what their names are, what they look like in an Eve Valkyrie. Like, absolutely not. Like I can't think of another property where I would want to be inside those fighters like I would with the Star Wars.
I think I don't care enough about Star Wars to where that's like not as much of a concern for me. It's just like, hey, it's a good space dogfighting game, but like in the X-Wing, I felt like the cockpit was taking up a whole lot of the view, and I kept recentering. I kept wondering, like, am I too short for it? Does it think I'm Like this, does it need to be up here? But I kept hitting the like recenter around me thing, and it kept redrawing it in the same spot. So it just felt like not enough space, too much cockpit, not enough space.
Yeah, I could see
and
like the TIE Fighter is terrible for that because there's no fucking windows on the side.
Right, yeah,
it's a tiny little viewport in the front and no situational awareness. Like,
but it boils down to just like that's a game built for you to fly on your instruments. It's a game built for you to look at your radar and do that stuff. And that's why I think it ends up being like a little bit easier playing on a TV, because it's just like you're just staring at the instruments, lining up the shots and shooting, and that's fine. I think a lot of space sim, that's how I played Wing Commander back in the day too. But like, I think Valkyrie does a thing where you are looking around, you are moving your reticle as you look. And so the cockpits are built with that in mind, generally speaking, and you are looking to maintain lock. And I think it's just something that ends up being a better VR experience than Squadrons. Squadrons is like, if you care about those cockpits and those ships, all that other stuff, like I think they nail that stuff really well.
Like I do. Like the first time I flew the the X-Wing in the second mission, when I realized that as I throttled up on the controller, I could see my hand down to the left, like pushing the throttle forward, was like a full-on VR moment kind of thing.
See, for me, I think that ends up being like disruptive, because
like,
there's a part of me that's like, I should be playing this with like Knuckles controllers and reaching out and moving the throttle. And I should be like, the idea of like, I hit a button and then suddenly hands reach out in front of me to like repair the hull by like slapping a bunch of stuff around or whatever
with actual motion controllers, but it's $40
game. And also like that would be a way harder game to play. Like this is meant to be a very pick up and play experience. Like I think actually doing a full VR thing would just be weird. So so I think it's like caught in that weird middle ground of just like, it doesn't necessarily do any one thing particularly amazingly, but I think when you bring it all together, like and charge $40 for it, I think it's totally fine. Like it's fun. It is a space dogfighting game with that type of mission design. I think they're very carefree about it in a sense of, think about the mission briefings, and this still has some of that stuff, but like I don't know. You tell me. I think you've played a little bit deeper in the campaign than I have, but like, this isn't a game where you're going to get out of it and it's going to be like, you didn't complete all the objectives, you didn't get enough stars, it's just like, you just get in there, you do the stuff, and you're done.
It very much feels like it's just leading you by the hand from one objective to the next. It's like, okay, fly to this point. Now this cutscene is going to happen. Like now, kill these 8 ships. Now fly to this next point. We tell you now it's over.
It's not like anything. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of stuff hinging on like bonus objectives or any of that other stuff that a lot of those games in the past traded in very deeply in terms of just like, oh well, it's cool that you escorted these ships, but only 2 of them made it, so you only get 40%. Now you should probably play it again, you piece of shit. Why did you fuck it up so bad?
Yeah, like there's not a lot of variability in the way the missions play out. It's just kind of you do the thing they tell you to, and then you move on. Yeah, like as opposed to like unleashing you with just this list of mission objectives, and it's like, hey, tackle these however.
Yeah,
come up with your own plan. Like you're going through the motions, doing what they tell you to do. But I will say I started the story on veteran because I was worried that they had dumbed it down enough that it would just be kind of bland if it was too easy. But sure enough, I got wrecked by a pack of TIE fighters in the third mission, just like the first post prologue mission. Like just. It's not messing around on those difficulties, so you do have to like really get a feel for the combat and the turn and burn aspect of the
I think the situational awareness aspect of it comes into play when you're near capital ships. Like that's something that like I think in that second mission or something like that, where you're like, okay, there's like a ship out there that we needed to take down, and it's close to a capital ship. So like as I get closer to it, I'm going to start getting fucked up. And knowing to either wait for it to get out of range of the capital ship before you take it on, or knowing that you need to get in there, get some hits in, and then change to shields and get away, or change to engines and get away, and kind of reset, come back in for another run. Like that is where that's more than just instruments. Like that's where you would ideally want to be able to look around and kind of parse that stuff out for yourself. And I had mixed results with that in VR. I don't know.
The one place VR has been super gameplay relevant so far is in the X-Wing. I don't know how many ships you fly in the campaign. I've just done X-Wing.
Multiplayer's got A-Wings and Y-Wings and U-Wings, which is like the resupply ship.
Okay. So the X-Wing's got that like giant pane of glass over your head, just kind of big open canopy. And that's the one time that's really been super relevant in VR to me, is like having a TIE fighter that I've got locked on, like zoom over top of me, and I literally like crane my neck up and watch it go by and try to keep it in my field of view by looking straight up through the top of my my cockpit. You know, like if you're playing it on a TV, you don't have that independent look from the way that your ship is facing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So
and you kind of can, like, there is a, like, you can use the right stick to look around the cockpit, but it's like, it seems like it's pointless that it's in there. I don't get why that's there, because they have it for VR or whatever. But I think that's where I kind of swing back to Eve Valkyrie, because that situational awareness and that sort of like, I need to look around and see around the ship is like hyper relevant at all times, because that is how you're aiming.
Sure.
And that, I think, just makes for a more kinetic, like, to me, I don't think Eve Valkyrie is some amazing game. I mean, I think they did some free to play stuff to it that really boned it up, and some of the progression really sucks. And they got to a point where there was just like, it was hard to find a match, and it's this multiplayer only thing. Like, it is very thin, but I feel like out of the gate, it also really nailed the, hey, this is like a location based, like if you went to an arcade and paid $15 to play BattleTech, or like, it's got that kind of like location based entertainment feel to it, of like, this is an experience, you sit in, you do this multiplayer thing, and then you're done. And maybe you don't play it a billion times because it is so thin, but for that 10 minutes there, it's fucking killer. And I think that's why, because it is that VR cockpit experience, and it feels like built to take advantage of the stuff you can do in VR by just making looking around be a tactical, you know, like a very meaningful thing in that game. And I think that's just why I think I like it more than Squadrons. And, you know, if people are attached to the Star Wars, you know, IP and those ships and stuff, I think obviously they'll feel differently, but I think that's just a more interesting VR game.
Sure. I could see it. But yeah, there is that wish fulfillment, of course.
Sure.
For people who care. Yeah, I'll probably play through the rest of the campaign. I kind of want to see where it goes, and if they give you more interesting stuff to do as you get deeper in. But
yeah, I think I'll probably stick with it at least for a while longer, and we'll see.
Yeah, but I do think VR and probably on hard is the way to actually feel like you're really doing stuff in that game, as opposed to just kind of going through the motions that they've set out for you.
How's the sound design? That's always a really big thing for me in Star Wars games.
Pretty good, but I mean, it's just Star Wars sounds.
Yeah,
sure. Well, if they nail the Star Wars sounds,
totally,
I'm happy.
Totally, they've pretty much.
They imported that library. When a TIE fighter flies over, you go, oh.
Actually, that stood out to me in the first mission of like, you know what a TIE fighter sounds like when it like swoops by you. You know that Doppler effect of like, and then it goes away. They had to figure out what it sounds like when you're just sitting in a TIE fighter puttering along at like the slowest possible like cruise speed. And it's like that, but just like this low hum that's like really unsettling, just this like scratchy.
And they do a good job, like when you are throttling up, of just like, obviously like the engine sounds low to it sounds high. When you get it up to high, you're like, no, that's a TIE fighter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So
that stuff
you're
sounds
right.
and feels
That stuff is good.
That stuff sounds and feels good. Actually, the one other thing I meant to mention is, like, ironically, I think VR is the way to play that game, but the PS VR version of that game, even on a Pro, looks pretty grimy.
I bet.
Like, the textures are so low resolution. Like, even the skybox, like all the stars when you're out in space, just look like these mushy blobs of.
I think there's some stuff about the space, like the stars in space. I think actually, I agree. Even on the PC, that maybe some of that stuff didn't look amazing all the time, but. How did you find the cockpit? Like, still totally readable?
You can tell the cockpits are where they put all the detail.
Yeah,
because that's the thing that's right up in your face. The cockpit stuff looks totally fine on the PSVR, but some of the in-game graphics are a little rough.